Welcome back to the Wanting It More podcast. I'm your host, Janna, and today I have two special guests today, and they're both men, which is very unusual for this podcast, but I think it's going to be a great episode for not only women, but for men as well. So today I have Steve Horseman and Dan Dorr joining me from Good Guys to Great Men. And why don't you both individually just introduce yourself a little bit and tell everyone how you came to be doing the work that you do with men.
Who wants to go first?
You go first.
Okay, I'll go first. One thing we coach men is get to the point. We coach men on less is more. We coach men on being concise and saying what you mean without rambling and using weak language. And so I'm trying to answer your question, Jenna, the way we coach, because there's such a story. There's such a story behind becoming a 50-year-old man and then finding out that your marriage is ending and that nothing is what you thought it was going to be, and then the pain, and then the trying to understand and divorce and men's groups and learning and reading books and all of a sudden becoming inspired to start a company called Good Guys to Great Men. That I could take an hour to tell the story, but that's pretty much it. But it's a cliche. One thing we tell men is that your life is a freaking cliche, dude. That's the bad news. The good news is there's a small group of men who know that they can take the commonplace nature of pain and relationship trauma and divorce and become something totally different, something better than you've ever been before. And for men, it takes the pain sometimes of that devastation and that loss and rejection to want to learn. And so that's what happened to me. That's how I got into this. And Dan and I are in the business of attracting men who, that small sliver of men who want to take the pain of a relationship failure or problems in relationship, not always a relationship failure, and decide, instead of wishing the world was better and instead of wishing women were easier or better, instead of wishing for that, I want to wish that I could be better. I could be stronger. I could be more smart. I could be more understanding, more compassionate, and not feel the anxiety of desire and the disappointment of rejection. I want to be better. So that's what we do. That's what we do. And that's what I had to learn before we can start the business, is that there's a way of thinking about the cliche of relationship trouble between men and women that is very empowering when you decide to own your entire experience of it and also own the part that you co-created. And that's how we got here. It's a very short answer, but I want to keep it short for now because I'm sure questions will get there. And somewhere along the way, I met this guy.
Yeah, so along following on from what Steve said, yeah, so I had similar sort of thing, but not an ending of a relationship, but a relationship that was going in a direction that I wasn't happy with, and trying to understand it and generally making it worse as I went along. I think a lot of guys can relate to that, that we get to a point of pain or frustration or confusion, and we're very bad at reaching out. We're very bad about talking to other men about it. We've often lost all of our support circle. We've pushed them to the side to be provider, protector, family man, etc., etc. And so we have no support network, and we certainly have no support network where we can really be vulnerable and talk about scary stuff like my relationship is, sexless, or it's affectionless, or, we're just arguing all the time, or anything like that, where men are just afraid to open up and be real. We'd much rather stay at the shallow end of the pool and just talk about sports and the weather and women, but not in the way that we're talking about here. So that's my entry point too, but rather than a relationship ending, a relationship that, was a little bit struggling and difficult. And certainly for me, it was an incredibly interesting journey to go through, still an interesting journey to go through, to continue to learn about myself, what I wanted, because particularly I was not very clear about what I wanted. I was very clear that relationship was very important and that family was very important, but what my needs were was kind of lost to me, hidden to me. So, but I would often try and get those things passive aggressively or in some kind of subconscious way, manipulation, control, that sort of thing, but without really knowing I was doing any of that stuff. So very interesting path to go through. And then, of course, that's what we do with other guys now. And it's a thoroughly enjoyable, beautiful journey to take a guy from a place of pain and confusion to a place of really knowing himself, liking himself, oftentimes for the first time ever in 40, 50, even 60 years, and then being able to be that person in his relationship and see what happens, see where it goes.
Wow, there's so many questions just based on your introductions. I wish I could take notes somehow.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, and we're done. So I've heard a little bit of hints into this, but maybe we could clarify it even further. It was interesting to ponder the term good guy and then a great man. And I'm wondering if you could break that down a little bit. I know you've touched on that already, just so it's really clear. What are you considering a good guy? And what is this good guy struggling with? And then what's a great man? And what are the qualities that you're helping men figure out for themselves?
I came up with the name, searching for a business name, and I wanted one that communicated the transition, the transformational work that we do. And so I was the original good guy, the OG. Good guy. I'm not the first. There's been billions ahead of me. And it's based in the idea that there's an emotion we have that I've done everything I'm supposed to do and I'm not happy. I've been to school and I've gotten the job and I've made the money and I bought the house and I've planned the vacations and I've tried to clean up and do my fair share and I don't feel loved. I don't feel appreciated. I don't feel desire. I don't feel like I matter. And I've been a good guy. I've done all the right things. Haven't I, mommy? Aren't I a good boy? And as a grown ass man, you get into this mode of thinking, I'm a good guy and I deserve to have better than this. The problem about good guys, Robert Glover wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which is a form of good guy. There's an insecurity and an immaturity in the good guy. What he doesn't understand is that a lot of what he's doing is contractual. He's got conditions tied to it. He's got hidden covert agendas or covert contracts that he has. And when he doesn't get his needs met by trying to manipulate them, by being a good guy, he gets really angry and he starts doing other passive aggressive things that become insidious and usually cause the relationship issues or the end of the marriage sometimes. So the good guy has an insecurity about him that he himself doesn't even understand. He doesn't understand what insecurity is or how he's showing up as an immature man when it comes to conflict, argument, compromise, sexuality. He's got a lot of weird behaviors that he doesn't know any other way. The great man is one who becomes very, very aware. Becomes educated. He becomes more insightful into the biological underpinnings of relationship and the differences between men and women. He becomes more informed about his own sense of shame of not being strong enough and feeling weak, and he's trying to prove himself all the time. And when he becomes mature and secure around himself and who he is and what he believes in, he becomes less demanding that the world bends to his will, less demanding and expecting that his family and wife should be making him happy through demonstrations of respect, appreciation, sexual desire. And so he becomes a lot more peaceful. So the great man has a mountain lion type of swagger to him. All of the sudden he believes, it's not all of the sudden, it's through our process. He discovers what he always knew, that he's actually okay. He just never thought he was okay. He had a thinking problem. And so the great man has a very calm, deliberate, and amused sense of himself now that he doesn't need everything he thought he needed, and that the path to getting what he wanted is different than he ever thought before. He actually learns to stop trying so hard.
That's great. Dan? Well, yeah, what was your experience, Dan, of being a good guy and then transitioning into what you're experiencing now?
Yeah, very similar, really. I think a lot of what I said at the beginning of the introduction, not knowing about expectations and demands and things like that I was communicating without actually really knowing that I was communicating them. I knew I had the designs and desires and things like that, but I couldn't really put a name on them. couldn't really explicitly tell you what they were. There was a fair bit of shame in there, especially around sexuality and just wanting to be able to have affection or touch or whatever it was, cuddling. It doesn't, those sorts of things, not being able to just talk about them confidently, be able to name them. And certainly emotionally, I think great man, we would say, is somebody who is very much owning his experience, fully owning his experience. So he's in complete awareness and control of his emotional state. He can talk about it. He can say he's pissed off if he's pissed off. He can say he's upset if he's upset, but the emotion isn't taking over. The emotion is there. He's able to understand it. He's able to translate it and express it. And then also able to, be in a connection with somebody else whilst they're in an emotion and navigate that, so being able to have the relating tools that I certainly didn't see any of those. I certainly don't remember ever seeing a parent of mine say to the other one, could I have a hug? Right? I feel sad. Or, go through having an argument and come out the other side with a better connection. Yeah, I never saw that, so that's what I think a great man really is. He's grounded in himself. He knows himself better than he's ever known himself. He knows who he is. He knows what he wants. He knows where he wants to go. And he's able to relate in a way that is very present, very open, and very relaxed, and it builds trust. And he's able to create connection, kind of wherever he would like, he's able to create connection. So sometimes we'll talk about kind of accepting and welcoming. So in other words, whatever state you're in, even if you're upset with me, I can accept that and I can welcome that. Okay, now we're in a position where we could actually have connection. Even though you're upset with me, you understand that I'm welcoming your upset. Okay, well, now the connection is available. If I'm fighting or resisting in some way or another, your state, your emotion, your thoughts, etc., we have no way of connecting.
Yeah, I see this. I see men really struggle with their wives seeming unhappy. And maybe could you speak a little bit more about that in terms, I know before we had this interview, we had a conversation just to make sure we're kind of on the same page. And we talked about that saying, happy wife, happy life. And you've already spoken about that a little bit, but what would you say to a man who is really struggling with his wife being unhappy with him and just has that anxiety about her having emotion, intense emotion? What would you say to him?
At first glance, you can hear somebody go, well, this happy wife, happy life thing is a bunch of bullshit. And it sounds really aggressive. It sounds really resentful. Men in our group understand that happy wife, happy life can have a dark side to it because it's really full of the idea of people pleasing. A good guy is all about making mama happy. A good guy is all about making mommy happy. The younger side of us, our 11 or 12-year-old prepubescent little boy, is ever present in us. He's with me right now in this podcast, right? We have to make sure, I'm aware of what he's thinking or feeling at all times. So when we get into a marriage, we start to think that if we can make her happy, and the word happy, we talk a lot. It's a very strange word. The idea that happiness is a place that you get to after a certain amount of time, or if you do or be the right thing, you finally arrive at happiness. And we don't believe that. We teach that happiness is not a destination. It has to be a place to come from. And only a mature, secure man can come from happiness. So if he has an unhappy wife and he's reached this state of realization, he understands that her unhappiness very well could have something to do with something he positively, objectively did wrong, that he really screwed up. But most of the time, an unhappy human being, not just a woman, but an unhappy human being is suffering from some variety of garden variety anxiety, sadness, thinking problems, assumptions. There's some external stimulus that's made them go into a soft, dark place to where they don't want to be expressive or communicative or affectionate or sexual. And so if she's seeming disconnected or unhappy, Stop thinking that you somehow caused it all and now you have to jump through every hoop in the world to fix it. What's the matter? What did I say? What did I do? What can I do? What do you need? Oh my God, mommy, 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 please love me. And as most women will tell us, that I already have 3 boys, I don't need a fourth, and I'm certainly not having sex with the fourth one, right? If you're going to treat me like that, you want to be more grounded in the fact that her happiness doesn't always mean something about you. We always have the caveat. If you know you screwed up, you need to make that right. And be very aware of when you actually do screw things up. Even if she says, I'm happy with everything else in my life but this marriage and you, it's not always about you. So we teach them to be softer, to be more patient, to be more compassionate. Stop being resentful. Stop reacting with anger and competitiveness to try to find a way to be right so she could be wrong, as if that ever worked. So happy wife, happy life is only bullshit because we believe that human beings don't get to happiness. Human beings have to mature to a point that they see that happiness is a place you come from, not a place that somebody makes you.
Sometimes we use, there's a quote from one of the books that we use, and it says that she wants to see a sparkle in your eye, but she doesn't want to be that sparkle. And what that really points to, almost sometimes you'll hear people say happy life, happy wife. In other words, once you have created yourself a happy life in yourself, you have options for connection, you have options for fulfillment. It's not all on her and the relationship. Then there's the chance to have a happier wife, a happier relationship, a happier, full, balanced life. But you have to get clear about not just the relationship. If your total fulfillment as a man is coming from your relationship, there's something out of balance there, you know. And I think this is definitely the case in a lot of the guys that we talk to. When the relationship is struggling, when we dig into some other aspects of his life, they're often, you know, not challenging him anymore, and they're not really providing that stretch and that fulfillment for him anymore. And so, yeah, he's bringing his, what I would call the hunt. I think we often need a hunt as guys. We need something to be going after, something that we're kind of chasing and evolving towards. And she's become the hunt, and that's not a fun place for anyone to be. No wonder you get certain reactions when you're the one in the headlights or the target. Then it's not a pleasant place to be. So I think that's part of it, that there's an element of having a fulfilled, balanced life where you get connection from lots of different places and you're able to create connection in lots of different places.
Yeah, that's what I see as well over here, especially around sex, is once men are getting married and doing the good guy kind of stuff, they lose their hobbies, they lose their guy friends, and yeah, everything is riding on his relationship, and not only that, but his sexual relationship. And that can lead to a tremendous amount of disappointment and rejection. And that's what I hear. I get a few emails from men, not a ton, but actually I just got an email that I responded to this morning from a guy. I said, hey, I'm doing this podcast episode, I'll bring it up. And he's saying, I'm trying, I'm doing all I can. I mean, he's listening to this podcast for women, trying to understand his wife. And he just said, when I don't get physical affection, when she says, no thanks, not right now, I feel crushed. I feel like it's a dagger to my heart. And he said, I've been struggling since, I think he said 2019, a couple years now. And he just doesn't know what to do. So what would you say to a man who's suffering that way?
I mean, there's lots that can play into that, what's happening there. I do think what we've just been talking about, pressure, how much pressure is going on. I'll let Steve talk about this, we use horses as an analogy to explain, because sometimes taking things out of the, let's talk about your specific relationship, because there's so much tied in with that and there's so much baggage and history, it's hard to, be able to see it objectively. So we use horses and horse training as an analogy to be able to understand how some of your behavior and your thoughts and your emotions and your desires and your expectations, how they are being received and felt in your relationship, and how you're oftentimes putting pressure on the other person to be a certain way, even if you said, that's fine, you initiated some kind of physical connection and the other person said, I'm just, I'm too tired or whatever it is, and you said that's fine. Your body can be communicating completely different message. Your body is communicating much louder than the words that you're using. And most of us guys, when you ask them, we're like, I have no idea what my body is communicating. No idea.
I want to talk about that crushed feeling. We can talk about horse stuff later. That crushed dagger to my heart. I heard every word, and we hear that a lot. There's a lot of words like that. And sometimes we'll just be a guy for a change and we'll go, geez, dude, do you do drama much? Dagger to the heart, crushed because she wouldn't have sex with you? Have you got nothing going on in your life that you can feel crushed in a dagger to your heart? Well, we'll make a little bit of fun of it because it's such a cliche that men always piss and moan about not having enough sex. But that whole dagger to the heart thing, you can say, well, research has shown that the part of the human brain that feels pain is the same part of the brain that gets lit up in MRIs when somebody gets rejected. So I have a right to feel devastated. I have a right to feel a dagger to my heart. And by the way, scripture says that women should have sex with husband, right? And all of this stuff. And say, start using intellect and psychology to justify their sense of indignation and the dagger and this, all of that stuff. And so we go deep. We say, let's get real about what's going on here. You feel weak, you feel powerless, and you feel small, and you hate feeling weak and undesired and powerless and small. You hate that. And just so happens you're married to a woman who didn't want to have sex with you right now. And what got triggered was your sense of not being appreciated and respected and desired and belonged. And you feel weak and you feel small. That's a man problem. That's not a woman problem. It's not her fault. She didn't make you feel this way. It would, and think about if I had asked you to go, hey, let's go have a beer. Let's go have a beer and get a steak tonight. Let's go do that. And you said, I'm not really in the mood. I don't want to do it tonight. And I told you, oh, I'm so crushed. It's like a dagger to my heart. You rejected my offer. What would you think of me if that was my emotion? You would think that, man, I never want to go for a beer and a steak with this guy because he has this weird attachment to me. The point is, and this gets to some of the horse stuff, the pressure that his wife is feeling over the fact that she has the power to make him feel devastated, crushed with daggers in his heart, simply by saying, I'm not in the mood for sex. It totally changes her impression of who he is as a man. And his attractiveness and desirability as a sexual partner goes down quickly the more devastated you get because some outside influence makes you go down a dark spiral. And we talk really bluntly like this, that this is not a woman problem. This is a security problem in your manhood. You have to be a man who knows that you've got 30 or 40 more years of having sex. Why is tonight crushing you? Well, it's not just tonight. It was last week too. So we get really real and take her out of the equation. We help him understand why people say no in general to offers, whether it's sex or anything else. But we come back to the very basics of an immature, insecure man, whether he's 40, 50, 60, or 70, we have some of those too, is always going to feel devastated and crushed when people say no to him until he gets his sense of self back. And his sex life will improve when he gets his sense of self back. That's how we would talk to him. Sounds kind of harsh, I think.
No, I mean, it sounds like truth. So definitely what I see on the other end, what women are telling me. Well, what women tell me is I'm scared to tell him how I really feel, that I don't like that touch, or I don't want to do that thing in bed because I'm worried of his feelings. He'll feel rejected. He'll feel not important. He'll sulk. He'll pout. My life will get way worse than it is already. And so that's how we see non-consensual touch happening in so many marriages. Mm. And then women being diagnosed with low libido.
Yeah. Well, and so we'll speak to guys where this has been happening for a long time. And when we speak to them, you just mentioned non-consensual touch. That's like the worst possible thing. If they realize that actually their partner had been submitting or giving in to some kind of touch or some kind of physical affection and hating it or feeling, afraid or just uncomfortable, most of the guys we speak to, are mortified by that fact. And it is a fact because it is happening in a lot of the relationships. And so, yes, there's a part on both sides, obviously, to be able to just express yourself openly. But I think pretty much all the guys we speak to would say, don't ever do something with me that you don't want to do. I don't want to connect with you in a way where you're just doing it for me and it's obligation. No, I don't want that. Now, part of what we do with them is to get them to be able to even recognize that, to have a standard for themselves where they want enthusiasm, right? They want enthusiastic connection and not just go on then, get it over with. No, so many men are having that kind of sex, and no wonder they're frustrated, and no wonder all the emotions are boiling over because they're not having good quality, enthusiastic, fun, connected, playful connection. That's where we need to start. Is that how do you create that? How do you create that in yourself, in any other area of your life?
Yeah, that's what I see on this end. I really encourage women to only do things that they really want to do. It's a process to figure that out. And during that process, usually there's a period where there's a lot less touch because they're just figuring things out for themselves. And some husbands can really struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I often think about, well, I'll ask you this. What do you think men think they want out of sex versus what men really want out of sex?
I can answer that personally. From me, it's that feeling of acceptance. So actually, it's after the act of sex where we're just lying together and cuddled up. I feel fully, completely, totally, and utterly accepted. And that's the only place a lot of the time in my life where I feel that.
And what if maybe some traditional things didn't happen? I find a lot of men will say it only counts if we, have penis and vagina experiences and I get an orgasm. You can, we'll try our hardest for you to have your orgasm, but women are complicated. So there seems to be a very narrowly defined box of acceptability. What have you found in your own journey with that?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for building sexual tension and having fun with that and playing with that and being able to. So that needs me to be kind of better at being able to understand connection, understand tension and what that means and why it's an interesting thing. I think many times women would like to feel us feeling turned on, feeling attracted to them and not needing to do something with it. And that's what most of us guys were like, there's an itch and it needs to be scratched right now. And so now we're into a not just I have a need for some kind of connection, but I have a need that if I don't get, like, the world is going to fall apart. Or, one, that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on him and a lot of pressure on her. And two, that's not going to create a really fun, easy, playful interaction. And that's what I think we're really talking about there, where if you have a specific end in mind, as in it has to end with a certain type of connection, orgasm, whatever else, everything is about that and everything is leading towards that. Whereas there's so much richness in the connection, and I mean, kissing. How much fun is kissing? Especially if he doesn't have to go anywhere, if he doesn't need to, if you can just be gentle with it and explore each other, that's an amazing thing.
I like your question. I haven't heard it put that way. What do you think men think they want versus what you think men really want? Right? And you're asking us for a personal experience. My personal experience isn't everybody's. The answer isn't the same for all men. There's a category of man like me who used to think what we wanted was a very romantic, enthusiastic, sometimes pornographic version of sex, and that would be validating. And I think that that's what I want. If I could have it the way that I think real men get sex, then I would feel validated. And for guys like that, we would ask, do you know what it's like the 30 seconds after orgasm, then 60 seconds, then there's about 2 minutes, and then 5 minutes? Do you realize how empty you feel that it all happened and all of a sudden you're back in the darkness? What do you think that's all about? He goes, oh, yeah, I know. So what you think you wanted wasn't really what you wanted. Hollywood and all kinds of media have a way of programming our brains to think that we want that. Most of us want a feeling of acceptance, of desire, of appreciation, um, of our bodies, of our sensuality, of our touch. We want to feel appreciated, and we want that to linger longer than the half life of an orgasm, right? Which goes really fast. Um, and so I think that's for most of us. Now, some guys will go, oh, well, no, I just want to have sex and get it over with. I don't really need all the cuddling stuff. In our group, and we're not a red pill group, so we're not guys who are like super dominant or thinking that there's only one way to have sex. We kid ourselves that all of our guys are hopeless romantics. We all cry at Old Yeller, and we all have an idea of what the perfect love story looks like, and it does have a long lingering postcoital kind of warmth about it. And for most guys, that's what they really want. But let's be honest, in the right time, in the right place, that really lusty, enthusiastic, active sexual act, it's satisfying. It is satisfying. It's not the only thing, but it certainly is something we expect to have every now and then, that we don't want to die as grumpy old men and never have that. There's nothing wrong with that if it's consensual, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the piece there, the consent. Enthusiastic consent. You speak quite a bit about confidence, and I was thinking a little bit about that word and what is confidence and what is confidence wrapped in something else. So I'm just wondering what your take on it. How do you see confidence showing up for these great men?
We actually use a book written by a woman for women in our men's program around confidence, because she does such a really good job of breaking down confidence into 3 different areas, which is behavioral confidence, emotional confidence, and spiritual confidence. Now, I'll let Steve go into those a little bit more if he wants to. But for me, I think we're often talking about confidence and teasing apart the fact that you can't just be confident, and fake it till you make it confidence is not real confidence. Confidence is a result, and confidence is a result that happens when you take some action. But what action? Most guys in a difficult situation in a relationship will take any action they possibly can to get some kind of relief from the anxiety, from the pain, from the anguish, all of that sort of stuff. And so that's not going to get you confidence, because you're constantly chasing what's the right thing to do, the right thing to say to get me away from the pain. And you're just going to have to continue playing that game of trying to guess the right thing. So we would say the confidence comes from you really getting to know who you are and what you want, and being able to express that, being able to be honest, and being able to be open and real with what it is that you want, who it is that you are, and where it is that you want to go next, and inviting other people to join you in that. And as you do that, your sense of confidence, your sense of self-respect, your sense of self-worth builds. Even if you don't get the result that you would like, and that's part of the process, is to understand that you don't have any control over the outcome. All you can do is create an environment that is rich for the kind of connection or the kind of interaction that you want to have. But the other person gets to choose how they want to show up to that moment too. So you just get to get clear about, how do you want to create the opportunity for connection? How do you want to show up? And as you get better and better at doing that, naturally what happens is you start to feel more confident in yourself. Who knows what the actual end result is going to be, because half of the interaction, if we're talking about a relationship, is totally outside your control. It's a whole other person with a whole other, universe of stuff going on inside them. So Allow them to find their own response, but do you know what yours is? I often say you will never be more masculine than when you make a decision and you know exactly why you're making that decision. That's the most masculine you will ever be because you believe in what you're saying, you believe in the action that you're taking.
Before I even try to follow on, I'm wondering if that you still want to talk about confidence. Was that enough, Janna, or did you have another uh, take on the topic? I'm wondering what the context is for the idea of confidence.
It could be seen as dominance. And I know that's not what you're saying. So that's why I wanted to
Oh,
just
okay.
hear more about
Okay.
your take on confidence. Yeah.
So yeah, that one word gave me the clue of where you're going with this. Male confidence, masculine confidence has almost always been defined by the first two types of confidence, which is behavioral and emotional. Behavioral being if I can do this, meaning if I can learn this, know this, win this, beat this, accomplish this, achieve this, a warrior, very warrior kind of feeling. If I can do this, then I will be confident. I heard one young men's coach say the other day, if you take a combative martial arts and you learn how to beat up other people, you'll find peace in yourself. Really? Is that where peace comes from? But that's youthful men, guys in their 30s and high hormonal guys. I'm 61, so I'm not quite that guy anymore. But there is a sense in our society that those two confidence where you live out loud, you crush life, you do the things that need to be done, right? And that's where confidence comes from. I call that cotton candy confidence because it's based in achieving, crushing, and doing, being smarter than other people, making more money than other people. And it's based in comparison and competition. That kind of confidence is based in a measurement of are you better than other people, yes or no? And when men are raised like that, and most of us are, we come into a marriage with that. And then we try to have sex from that place as if there's a scoreboard somewhere and this is how it's going to go. We're going to crush the bedroom tonight. Oh, that's so great. And that's where the whole dominant, aggressive behavior can come from. Not with everybody, but that's a stereotype that is true in many cases. Now, the third type people don't get because the whole word spiritual and confidence have never been put together. Barbara DeAngelis wrote the book about confidence, but spiritual confidence, in a nutshell, is a very peaceful, a very secure, a very well informed, a very calm and amused sense of self that you know that you're okay at this very moment. You know things will be okay no matter what external things happen outside of you. It's also accepting that there is something probably bigger than you outside. You can call it spirit, God, universe, whatever it is that you have for you, but there's something bigger at play that defines your sense of confidence, that makes it inherent to you. That you were born with confidence. You were born with love. And as Marianne Williamson said, what we learn after that is fear. We learn competition and dominance and the fear of being weak. And so we construe confidence to be a measure of strength and dominance as opposed to a shit eating grin, which is the most confident you'll ever be because you need nothing to be confident when you have spiritual confidence because it's inherent in you. There's an internal knowing that your inherent value, your inherent character is good. And there's a sense of well being that's not changed by external things like jobs or money or sex. And a man who has spiritual confidence ends up having more sex than those who don't because he doesn't give a shit about it as much. He doesn't measure his well being or his worthiness through sex. He sees his sexuality as a place to come from. It's a gift he can give with people who would like to share it with him in the context he wants instead of trying to push it or sell it or bargain with it, which is what the more immature guy does.
Whew. Well, anything else? This is great.
What was that reaction was interesting. Whew, what was that about?
Yeah, it's refreshing. It's really wonderful. I shared this before with both of you, but as somebody who is on the other end, trying to empower women to speak their truth and be honest and overcome some of their fears that that what they're going to get from their husbands if they do tell the full truth about their experiences in the bedroom. It's just so wonderful to know that there are other men out there trying to do the work and trying to look within. And so I just, I've said this before, but again, thank you both so much for the work that you do. It's so needed in the world.
I think there's also an element of some of the stuff that you do with women around being able to just say how they're feeling, be honest, say what they want, say what they don't want, etc., etc. I mean, that stuff is going on with guys too. This is the shame spiral that is so difficult to see until you've done some work around being able to understand, why do I react in certain ways? Why does, when we talk about being rejected, for example, immediately I'm the one that's making myself feel so bad, because what's really going on is I don't feel worthy. And that's not anybody else. Nobody else can give you the worth that you can feel about yourself. You have to find that for yourself. So that's where the pain and the difficulty of the rejection comes from, is I'm actually in a shame spiral, but I can't see it and I don't know how to get out of it. And I really need somebody to help me with it. Versus, so we do a fair amount with guys to just be able to see that, and have empathy for that, understand that comes from somewhere, but it's not yours. It's not innate in you. It came from some conditioning somewhere along the line where you thought you had to perform a certain way, or you had to be attractive in a certain way, or whatever, to be able to get what you want to have. And of course, that's not true. And, so sometimes we'll use the very simple statement of, what if she's telling you the truth? What do you mean, what if she's telling me the truth? She can't be telling me the truth. Why not? Why can't she be telling you the truth? Well, really, that comes down to because then I'm not worthy. Then I'm not worthy of what I want.
Oh, how culture has impacted us all. The great unlearning has to happen, and it's really great to be on this journey with both of you. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of folks wondering how they can get their husbands to work with you, or maybe a few men who are curious. So do you want to let everyone know just the different types of offerings you have and how they can just get more of all this goodness?
We have a lot of things we've come up with over 10 years. For all walks of life. First of all, to answer the question, we get this a lot on YouTube and whatnot. How can I get my husband to watch your videos? How can I get my husband to come to a retreat? How can I get my husband to read this blog specifically? And one of the worst things you can do is have her print it off and throw it in his lap and with highlights on it and say, here, read this, you asshole. Not effective, not effective. One thing we do know that it's not super encouraging is that men don't look for help or ask for help until a certain level of pain has been reached. Anger, fear about divorce, even fear of losing their kids and half their wealth, right? All that stuff that we talk about. And they wind up with a flashlight under the covers at 3 a.m. Googling stuff. Men go to Google for help. And that's so to the women listening, I'm sorry that's the truth, but sometimes with encouragement instead of criticism, that I know if a woman is doing her work and she's really inspired by her work and she loves her work and she's becoming happy and confident again and realizing that her happiness and confidence has nothing to do with him, and she looks at him and holds his cheeks in his hands and saying, I want you to have men in your life. I want you to learn. I want us to learn together. I really do. You can do this, right? You go slap him on the ass and believe in him, because that will be so much more effective and encouraging than criticizing. What we hear a lot is all the negative words and expressions that shame him into not being good enough, into not making her happy, or you're a bad leader or whatever. So if you're a woman who is feeling the spark of doing your work and you know how great it is, share that with him. And if you want to share something we have that you like, you can do that. Good guys, two great men. The number two is in between the good guys. Two great men altogether.com is where you'll find everything we do. The retreats, we have a long roundtable guys who come in each month. We meet 3 times a month live there. A lot of those guys are one-on-one clients. Many of those guys have come to the retreats. What else? We have the divorce bomb course, how to diffuse the divorce bomb course, which is an incredible deep dive with another community attached to it. These are guys, hair on fire guys, who are just finding out that they might be losing their relationship. What else, Dan? What did I miss?
Well, I think the community, so we call it the men's roundtable. It's a community where you have access to other, what we would call initiated men, which really just means men who can talk about anything and go to any level of conversation or emotion with you because they've been there themselves. They understand it. They've gone through it and come out the other side. And they're there. They understand. There's no shaming going on there. They're not like, well, you just need to man up or you should cut her loose or all the stuff that you see out on the internet. It's not that. It's like, I get it. I've been there. I understand it. Have you tried this? Have you thought about that? What does it feel like when you do this? You know, lots of different perspectives to be able to understand. Plenty of people going in, when I was in your situation, I did this. Don't do that. It was the worst thing ever. You know, just some real practical, useful support from other people who get what you want and what you're currently going through. Because it's really hard. There's very few places for men to go where it's safe to be able to actually open up and share what's in your heart.
So good. So good. Thank you. Thank you again. This is going to be a real popular episode. I can already tell. Thank you. And thank you for that piece around how to offer this information to your husband, because I'm also on the other end. Sometimes I get emails from men who say, I've come across your work and my wife really needs your stuff and she really needs to take your program. And what do I do? And well, from now on, I'm going to go talk to Dan and Steve, because you got to do your own work. You can't ask your partner to be the one to do all the change if you're not doing anything yourself. So
it can't come from a place of, if it comes from that place of lack and, you know, disappointment, it's not going to motivate anything. If it comes from a place of genuine desire and want to care for the other person and want to care for the relationship, that's a very different message. And it's felt differently by the other person.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Fun.
Yeah, this is just refreshing and great, and just has the ring of truth to it, which I really appreciate. So thank you again. And if you want to learn more about Dan and Steve, again, you can go to goodguys2greatmen.com. They've got lots of stuff, lots of YouTube videos. So if you can spend a lifetime watching some of their stuff, and I've certainly been looking at theirs just so I can understand even more the male experience, because I'll always be a student of the male experience. It's not my lived one. So thanks again, and we'll see you in the next. Yeah, you're welcome. See you in the next episode. Bye.